Welcome to Click AI Radio, where you'll learn the secrets to transforming your small to medium business. Grant has been helping businesses transform using technology for over 30 years. Advanced technologies like artificial intelligence have been available only to large companies and advanced technical teams. Grant will discuss how you can use to leverage AI and other technologies to grow your small to medium business. As a gift, Grant is offering his ebook, AI for Sales Growth, at clickairadio.com. Now, here's your host and biz tech geek, Grant Larson.
Hey everybody, this is Grant. Welcome to another episode of Click AI Radio. All right, so today we are talking about Evergreen, and particularly how can we fast track key characteristics of our business to evergreen them. Now, the question might be, what is evergreen? Well, the purpose of an evergreen business is to make a long-term difference for your customers, right? We want to be able to establish enough value over time so that we can get that into as many customers as possible. Now, finding the recipe, as you know, to evergreen, especially when you're in early startup phases, that's a challenge, right? That certainly takes a lot of time. I actually think that the phrase evergreen is a bit of a misnomer in the sense that sometimes we think, well, it's long term, right? The evergreen is long term, but perhaps it's not the length of time that the solution is relevant, but rather the business's ability to adapt. I'll give you an example, an obvious one that we're all familiar with. Amazon started with books, right? And went to, what aren't they touching today, right? So they evergreened books long enough to open other avenues, and then they pivoted. And so what we're talking about is the ability to deliver sustainable value to customers long enough to let us pivot and continue to serve them. Now that's evergreen. And it's not just the original solution, right? But it's the ability to sustain value and then pivot to deliver new value. Now, today's easy to use AI, it actually fits squarely in the middle of this, using business insights to find the sustainable value and then recognizing when to pivot, either to add more value or to change out of the value that you're currently delivering. That is core to the use of AI today in our businesses. Hey, I was looking at a article recently. This was from entrepreneur.com. They said that, there's 4 kinds of online businesses. This is what they were describing. Here's the 4 categories. E-commerce, and that includes groups, right, like Amazon, eBay, Alibaba. SaaS, so that's like Google Drive and Adobe Creative Cloud and Microsoft Office 365. We all know those. There's a content style of online business. So this is, the New York Times or NerdWallet or Wirecutter. And then the 4th kind is digital service. So that's BetterSelf, BetterHelp, Gango, things like that. So e-commerce, SaaS, content, and digital service. So when we think about an online business and we think about, all right, what would I do to create an evergreen kind of business? Knowing that I got to sustain value long enough to provide enough value so that I have the flexibility and ability to pivot to add more value to our customers. All right, this article stated, this is interesting, that evergreen niches never go out of style. Right, so this e-commerce, SaaS, content, and digital service, those 4 areas from their argument is it never goes out of style. Here's some examples. There's the e-commerce example of Life Fitness. They manufacture exercise equipment. Heck, even in the world of COVID, that has, of course, become a massively booming industry. There's others such as, here's a SaaS example. The company example is Lose It. That's a subscription weight loss program. And then there's content style of business, PC Gamer, right? Where they review all the latest games. And then let me give you one here. This is a digital service like lynda.com. Now that one's actually a little old because that's an online education group that actually was bought by LinkedIn, who then was bought by Microsoft. But the point is, and I agree with them, You know what? Those kinds of niches, e-commerce, SaaS, content, and digital service, those are 4 kinds of online businesses. And if you want to build an evergreen style business online, you would look into those 4 categories. That's kind of interesting. So I transitioned to and was thinking more about, all right, what does it mean to evergreen? Let's say that we choose something within one of those areas, and it doesn't have to be an online business, but let's say that it is. What would be some additional techniques that we could do to actually evergreen the business? What are some of the characteristics of it? I looked into something from a CEO. His his name is Dave Horton. He's a CEO of Tugboat Institute. Don't know if you've ever looked into any of his stuff. Fascinating, brilliant guy, right? He's got this. In fact, he made this interesting statement, right? I was reviewing some of his stuff. He said, wealth is a byproduct of an evergreen company. He goes on further to say that evergreen businesses are led by purpose-driven leaders. I like that. I think that's critical to it. In fact, in order to sustain something like a business over a long period of time, hence evergreen it, hence deliver value over time, there's got to be a purpose. In fact, I think if you ask Russell Brunson, he would go further to say it's not only purpose, you need to give your people some identity, right? That's something that they can connect to and relate with as well. Anyway, back to Mr. Dave Horton. All right, evergreening a business, right? It's led by purpose-driven leaders. They've got grit and resourcefulness, to provide the ability to scale. All right, that makes a lot of sense. Now, one of the things that I noticed that Mr. Horton pointed out, which I think is pretty cool, there's 7 characteristics of the evergreen business, all right? So these are the things about the business that give it the best chance of evergreening, all right? Now, Mr. Horton does a lot in terms of venture capital. I'm not here to say if that's good or bad. I've been involved in startup companies where we had venture capital and others where we didn't. So it just kind of depends. Now, let me read these off. These are actually pretty cool. All right, because he says, look, often entrepreneurs feel under-resourced, right? And so they often end up needing some sort of venture capital work. But I think the work that Brunson and those guys do is awesome in terms of helping you not to have to rely on that at all times. All right, let me get to these 7. Here's the 7 characteristics of a company. So let's say you've got your company. What do I need to have in terms of these qualities within my company to help me evergreen? Number 1, purpose. All right, so I already hinted at that one, right? Being passionately driven by some compelling vision and mission, right? What's your why? What's your cause, right? Number 2, perseverance. Having the ambition and resilience to overcome obstacles and keep pursuing that mission into the future. Number 3, people first. Boy, this one gets a lot of lip service, but a lot of companies don't actually make it that way. People first, engaging a workforce of talented associates who excel as a team and are motivated by the mission and the culture. In fact, there was one startup company I worked with in Silicon Valley. I joined real early in the days of it. There's just a handful of it. And they said, you know what? Yeah, the resume is interesting. We're more after aptitude. They would hire aptitude, and then they'd say, we can tell you, train you on the job, but your ability to be creative, et cetera, et cetera. They had this set of characteristics that were crucial to them. I loved it. Ultimately, we grew that thing to a very large organization. We sold it to IBM. So I think they were on the right model there. People first. They were awesome at it. All right, here's another one. Profit. Okay, this is number 4, profit. The key point here is don't mistake profit as the purpose of the business, but recognize that it's essential for survival and independence. And it's the most accurate measure of customer value delivered. All right, I agree with that. But I love how they say it's not the purpose of the business. The purpose of the business is to deliver the value into the customer. All right, number 5, private. Now this was an interesting one because it talks mostly about your ability to create a network of other companies that are around you, that support you, and that ultimately help you to deliver what it is you're taking to the market. Number 6, paced growth. This is a critical one. I've seen organizations that grow too fast and then their internal operations and business processes can't scale to support it. So it's actually getting the right pace of growth. Oh, obviously, there's the other problem, which is not enough growth. But this is all about having the discipline to focus on the long-term strategy, right? Where you're balancing short-term and long-term performance. All right. And then the seventh one, very interesting, it's around pragmatic innovation. So this is all about having continuous improvement processes built around taking a very calculated risk approach to innovation. Now, my experience has been that AI applies to several of these. I'll call out two of them. The two I'll call out is paced growth and pragmatic innovation. In my work with AI, some groups I've seen will go apply AI, and if the model says, hey, it's 90% probability, then they'll just run to it and go do it, but they won't take into consideration the impact to their business processes. So it needs to be applied intelligently. The other's around pragmatic innovation. Here's the key thing about AI. When you're going to use it to help build and grow your business and to evergreen it, you actually want to take reads from the AI on a continuing basis. You don't want to overdo it, like, looking at the cake in the oven too often kind of thing. But hey, every couple months, you're going to be watching, all right, what has changed? Has it affected our model, etc.? And take those insights early. In fact, you'd rather know those insights early rather than later. So AI plays a role in evergreening our business. All right, a couple things I wanted to point out here. Many evergreen companies, they'll bootstrap or they'll self-fund and never require institutional capital. But what I've noticed is that those that practice these principles, these 7 principles that I talked about of these characteristics, and use AI on a continuing basis over time, the bad practice is you go run the AI once and then forget it. That's a recipe for failure, right? That's not the right way, because just as Amazon is no longer just all about books, right? You would no longer do that with your AI. Don't just run it once and then leave it as is, because your business and the world and the context around it will need to change, just as Amazon's changed and so forth. So always make sure you're keeping it up to date and fresh. So these 7 characteristics around evergreening your business are foundational to actually growing to a point where you can take your hand off of the wheel a bit, but still stay in touch with AI that's reminding you on a continual basis, all right, pivot here, make this adjustment there. All right, everybody, that's it. Thanks for joining. And until next time, fast track those 7 characteristics with AI to evergreen your business.
Thank you for joining Grant on Click AI Radio. Don't forget to subscribe and leave feedback. And remember to download your free ebook. Visit clickairadio.com now.